Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest business stories, their context, their relevance and impact. I'm Govindraj Ethiraj. Chinese President Xi Jinping was in India this week to explore new areas in strategic ties. After a day-long visit to Ahmedabad, President Xi held summit-level talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, where economic ties and the border dispute were discussed. Some landmark agreements were signed as well. Here's a report.
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Chinese President Xi Jinping in New Delhi for summit-level talks, the issue of border incursions by the Chinese army in Ladakh weighed heavy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi raised the issue, saying it was important to have mutual trust and peace at the border to realize the full potential of the relationship.
हम इस बात पर सहमत है कि सीमा क्षेत्र में शांति और स्थिरता हमारे आपसी विश्वास और संबंधों की नींव है। यह दो देशों की एक महत्वपूर्ण सहमति है और इसका दृढ़ता से पालन किया जाना चाहिए। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता के लिए LAC की क्लैरिफिकेशन बहुत बड़ा योगदान दे सकती है। यह कई सालों से रुका हुआ है और इस कार्य को दोबारा शुरू करना चाहिए।
双方同意继续尊重和照顾彼此关切，以积极态度妥善处理两国间存在的问题。中印边界问题是历史遗留问题，多年来双方通过友好协商稳步推进边界谈判，取得了积极进展。中印边境地区保持了和平与稳定。由于边境尚未划定，有时可能会出现涉边事件，但双方完全可以通过现有多层次的涉边机制，及时加以有效管控，防止对双边关系形成大的干扰。中方有决心同印方通过友好协商早日解决边界问题，也有诚意在此之前共同维护好边境地区的和平与安宁。
In the summit meeting between the two leaders and then the delegation-level talks, the two sides decided to step up engagement in diverse areas. Prime Minister Modi also expressed concern over trade imbalance and requested the Chinese president to ease restrictions for investment by Indian companies in China.
मैं दोनों देशों के 5-year इकोनॉमिक एंड ट्रेड डेवलपमेंट प्लान को एक अहम कदम मानता हूं और मैं उसका स्वागत करता हूं। आज हुए समझौतों और घोषणाएं यह दिखाते हैं कि अपनी साझेदारी को बढ़ाने में हम लोगों के बीच संपर्क और कल्चर, टूरिज्म और आर्ट को केंद्र बिंदु मानते हैं।
双方同意共同引领区域合作，推进孟中印缅经济走廊建设，支持对方参与区域和次区域合作，发挥中印双引擎作用，引领地区经济增长，促进本地区的发展繁荣。
Among the 12 agreements that were signed, the one between the external affairs ministries of both countries regarding the construction of a new road for the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra stands out. The MOU provides for conducting the annual pilgrimage through the Nathula Pass in Sikkim, reducing hardships and journey time, enabling more pilgrims to undertake the yatra. Two agreements regarding strengthening cooperation in railways were also signed. Under the MOUs, both sides have agreed to enhance cooperation in the sector under several programs. To strengthen cooperation in the peaceful use of space, an MOU was signed between ISRO and the China National Space Administration. There was also agreement on establishing sister city relationship between Mumbai and Shanghai. A 5-year trade and economic development plan between the commerce ministries of both countries was also signed. Underlining India's importance for China, President Xi Jinping has invited Prime Minister Modi to visit China early next year. He also announced that 2015 would be observed as Visit India Year by China. Earlier in the day, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj called on President Xi Jinping.
Well, now joining me to discuss the impact of the Chinese president's visit to India are two economists, CRISIL's K Joshi and Madan Sabnavish of Care Ratings. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Joshi, let me begin with you. What are we taking away from all of this? I mean, you know, we had the Japan visit, the Prime Minister Modi's visit to Japan, a lot of agreements signed, the Chinese president's visit to India, again a lot of agreements signed, both giving us a sense that there are massive investments coming to India. How should we be looking at it?
Well, I think first of all, it's good to engage with the world because we are in an interconnected world, and we also need to develop infrastructure. So the engagement with both China and Japan is in the direction of developing infrastructure, developing manufacturing.
And when you say
sector.
engagement, it also almost seems to suggest that we were not engaging sufficiently earlier.
We are scaling up the engagement, I would put it that way. I think we were always engaged, but I think now the kind of activity you have seen, the concentrated activity in the last few months, I think that's pointing towards enhanced engagement with the rest of the world. And I think it's now it's going to be US, which is the next one. And I think this can be a win-win situation provided we put our house in order first. I think you need to have ability to absorb those investments also. I think you need to put systems in place so that the foreign investors have comfort. I think once you do them, then I think the situation becomes win-win, because then your infrastructure is created and the person who's investing in infrastructure or the country which is investing also gets a minimum.
Okay, so infrastructure is a key word here. Madan, how do you see this?
So the way I look at it is there are two parts to it. If you see, ever since Mr. Modi came to power, he has been trying to create as enabling an environment as possible for investment. So he's first started off by looking at whatever policies could be tweaked in order to ensure that domestic investment was kept up. And I think in the second stage, he's actually going global and trying to make sure that you're trying to get as much of foreign investment from other countries as is possible. And as far as China is concerned, I think there are a lot of political overtones also, because I don't think we've had a very, very healthy relationship with China in the past. And I think what he's trying to do is actually sort of get both of them together, both the politics and the economics together. And in the process, if we're able to get more investment from China, it will be very helpful for us.
Okay.
Because overall, if you see, I don't think China is a major investor in India as of today. I think it's less than 0.5% of the overall for FDI which has come in.
Right.
So anything more would definitely be positive.
Right. And it's mostly imports. I mean, we're looking at more than $50 billion
if you're looking
imports.
at trade, yes. If you look at, we do import a lot from China today, but if you look at exports, we don't have too many exports going there. So hopefully, I think both in terms of trade as well as investment, we should be able to get it.
Right. And that's the other problem, right? So we are exporting low value added, we're importing very high value added, and that's clear, it's a deficit in more ways than one.
Yeah, actually, and the deficit has widened because one of our export items, which was iron ore, is now completely, those exports have dried up. So I think we're running a trade deficit of about 36 billion currently with China, which is about 27% of the entire trade deficit. So I think China is adversely contributing. And what we export is low value good, and what we import is high value goods. And I think the conflict might come because we are trying
cotton exports, for instance,
raw cotton, and I think also some extent chemicals, etc. And iron ore was, as I was mentioning, was one of the items. So I think now the issue is India wants to develop its manufacturing sector, and a lot of exports into India are from China. So I think that how do we resolve that is going to be an issue, because China also is promising that they are going to open up their market for us, in the sense that things like pharmaceutical, which are high value added, these things could be exported to China probably, not just textile, not just cotton yarn, but maybe a little beyond that.
Right. But then what can we take away from this in terms of, so one is the challenge of absorption of investment, right? But what else can we take away from the way China has managed its own internal economy and investments?
No, I think I would tend to believe that this is going to be the beginning of something much bigger which is going to happen. But what really is going to happen, how exactly the flows are going to sort of come in, it could be anyone's guess. Because I think we should not get sort of overwhelmed by what's happened today. It's not to say that we're going to have billions of dollars coming in, even though there are certain arrangements which have been struck in with the Gujarat government, where we would be seeing certain kind of significant inflows coming in. But on the whole, I think, again, I'll go back to saying that the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has been looking in terms of opening up certain things in FDI, say defense or your railway equipment. We're also talking in terms of large infrastructure requirements which are there. And China is somebody who has the funds, and in case the relations are cemented, this would definitely help to get into flow of funds. Because today, if you see the overall flow of funds domestically, what's being generated from the debt markets or the credit markets, or in fact from the ECB channels, are more or less limited. So might as well get in these kind of funds to the extent that they would come in.
Okay. And also, Mr. Joshi, we are also conjoined in some ways to the thanks to the BRIC Bank, right? Where does that play a role, or potentially play a role in all of this?
Well, it can be linked to that, because BRIC Bank could be used for funding of infrastructure, etc. The needs of particularly these economies. So I think it could play into this aspect also. I think it could be, the funding could also be through BRICS. I mean, so all of them, I think, but we haven't heard much about BRICS after that.
After the announcement.
After the announcement.
Yeah, but assuming that it's all coming together.
Well, I think, if all the dots are connected, I think you will get a good picture. I mean, in the
end. Right. So, what are our key challenges today, and where can a country like China particularly or specifically help on that?
So, if we're looking at aid, there's a funding coming in. The thing is that how open we are, we'll have
but funding is generic. I mean, you're not saying
funding
that
is generic.
wherever
We're
it comes
talking
from.
Okay, we say funding going in infrastructure, but then we need to know in which particular sectors are we really going to get it. Are we going to have the same kind of an enabling environment here? Because just go back to the doing business scenario is not very good for India. So it's one thing to say that, okay, FDI can come in, but certain things have to go through parliament, certain things will have to have other kind of administrative.
And normally there are more red flags when it comes to Chinese
more red
investments.
flags. So exactly. So keeping all this in mind, I think we shouldn't actually, as I said in the beginning, we shouldn't get overwhelmed or think that there's a solution coming in. But definitely we could be seeing certain positive things coming from China too.
Right. And that's the signal you're also saying. You're saying that more than perhaps the Chinese investment coming in or the Japanese investment coming in, it shows that we are integrating with the global economic climate much, or the scenario much better than we were
in a more constructive way, because I think our engagement with China had always been higher despite the political discomfort. Our trade with China expanded at the fastest rate. Today, 11% of the total imports in India come from China. So we have actually enhanced our trade considerably. Now I think this will be more constructive, I think, if it is in the infrastructure segment.
So if I were to come back to your larger point of, let's say, the overall investment climate in the country, what is the unfinished agenda as of now?
Well, I think if you look at the competitiveness index, our rank has fallen 20 points, I think, in the last couple of years. Doing business, Madan was mentioning, we have fallen. I think there, the things have just begun. I mean, single window clearance, I think making sure that the environmental land acquisition, these issues are sorted out. I think these are the unfinished agenda, because these are very critical to any physical investment. I mean, if land is such a big issue, getting land, or if getting electricity connection causes a heartburn, I think those issues also need to be sorted out.
And as the Prime Minister goes to the United States and meets with a whole lot of investors there, these are the issues that are going to come up again.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's basically comfort, and taxation is other issue which I think we need to sort out, the retrospective taxation, etc. It's not been completely sorted out, but we have given comfort that this will not be resorted to in future.
Right. So Madan, what's left?
No, I think the money has to come in. I think that's the final thing, because I think we've heard very good sounds being made even by the previous government just before it went out of power, and even by the current government. But we really need to see investment flowing in. I need to see the numbers coming in, which is actually going to lead to a revival in the economy.
Right. Let's, on that happy note that the revival is around the corner, we need to take a break on Policy Watch, but we'll come back and talk about inflation. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still with Policy Watch. The wholesale price index has fallen to a 5-year low of 3.74% in August versus 5.19% in July. Buoyed by the numbers, the Reserve Bank Governor Raghuram Rajan has said that it means that the economy is on a path to recovery.
Softening prices of food items, including vegetables, pulled down the WPI inflation to a 5-year low of 3.74% in August. The August inflation declined from 5.19% in July, while it was 6.99% in the same month last year. The figure for August is the lowest since October 2009, when it stood at 1.8%. Buoyed by these numbers, India Inc. has raised the pitch for lowering of interest rates to boost industrial output. But that won't happen anytime soon, as the RBI insists there is no point yet in cutting rates, as it will see prices going up again.
Inflation is coming down. That was the news on Friday, and this is consistent with our forecasts, and I'm glad that it's staying with our forecast. The bottom line, macro indicators are improving, but still have some way to go before we can declare that we are out of the woods. I'm hopeful that it's only a matter of time.
The RBI is targeting a retail inflation of 8% by January next year and 6% by January 2016. Meanwhile, Rajan has also said that the government must take advantage of the lowest oil prices in a year to deregulate diesel. Crude oil prices have fallen 14% since June to $96.38 per barrel. This, together with the monthly price increase of up to 50 paisa a litre, has trimmed losses on the fuel to just 8 paisa per litre.
We need to seize this moment to eliminate diesel subsidies completely. We can of course wait, but the moment may leave us and we may be back to subsidizing.
The next revision in diesel prices is due at the end of this month. Going by the present trend, the under-recovery or the difference between the imported cost and the retail selling price will be wiped out with a minimal hike. If the government deregulates diesel prices, it will empower oil companies to change rates in tandem with cost like they do in the case of petrol.
So, Mr. Joshi, the headline number in that sense, or the interesting number, is the fact that the core consumer price inflation number has fallen for the first time.
Yeah, I think since the index was launched in 2012, it has come below 7% for the first time, and I think it's being led by partly by consumer goods and also by transportation sector, which is benefiting from low fuel fuel prices.
And there are some sort of more fundamental undercurrents which seem to be secular. One is the fact that oil prices are coming down. The other is that we seem to be getting a grip of supply side inflation. Is that right?
Well, I think the beginning has been made, because if you look at the minimum support prices, very restrained increase in them. The government has said that they will release the food grain stocks as and when required. And also, I think wherever there is going to be a shortfall, particularly in pulses, etc., government is saying that we'll give credit to the states to import them. I think all this has built confidence from the supply side, though I think the issues still remain, but I think there's more comfort today.
More importantly, therefore, you're now saying or predicting that we could actually go into an era where inflation will actually start coming down in a manner that we can project it.
Well, I think you have to build on these steps further. I mean, it's the issue of productivity in agriculture, issue of protein inflation, which is not sorted out as yet. I think all those things are very much. We have been very lucky with respect to oil, because it's just sheer good luck that despite so much of geopolitical tension, global crude prices are low, and it benefits us fiscally, it benefits us in terms of inflation, and also I think we have a lower current account deficit because the oil prices
and diesel prices are for the first time again making money for oil companies.
And government's subsidy bill on oil will be 50 billion rupees less than what they budgeted.
Right.
So that is happening after a long time.
Right. So let's put that question to Madan as well. Madan, how are you also feeling that we are now heading towards, or rather more than heading anywhere, things are in control?
No, actually I have a slightly different view,
Okay.
because...
as you should.
Yeah. No, if you actually look at the food inflation, I think that's been a major problem which we've had. Now, if you've seen the progress of the monsoon, while we can take some comfort saying that the deficit has come down to 12%, but if you look at certain geographical regions which have been affected by shortfall of monsoon, and if you juxtapose this along with the area under cultivation of different crops, so the picture we really get is that we're likely to have a shortage in production of pulses, oilseeds, sugarcane, and coarse cereals. And I think we have come almost towards the end of the sowing season. So to my mind, I don't think there can be significant gains being made here. Now, if you look at things like pulses and oilseeds, we are typically importers of around 20% of our pulses, around 50 to 55% of our edible oil requirements. Now, any kind of shortfalls out here will definitely tend to put pressure on prices. We would, of course, be importing more. But what we have seen in the past is that even though the moment the world gets to know that India is importing more of these commodities, even in international
prices. So you're saying the food component of it is something that we may not be able to control.
So I think the prices will not be coming down anytime soon, and I think that's something which the central bank also has in mind, and therefore I don't think they'll be in a hurry to do anything on interest rates because of the inflationary expectations which are still there.
Okay, so we'll come to the interest rate question in a moment, but you're actually saying that it's really the other components which are coming under control, not so much food.
Rice, wheat, I think they can definitely bring it, and even rice has not been badly impacted this year despite the shortfall. I agree with Madan that the pulses, oil seeds, I think that's our index also shows that they have been adversely impacted, and you can do very little about it. But I think good news is that you have enough stocks of rice and wheat, and the rice this year is not that badly impacted. So and these have large weights in CPI, by the way. The pulses, etc., have a smaller weight, and global food price scenario today is not that bad. I mean, they're quite.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a report that we are seeing multi-year lows.
That's right. So I think so. Imports will not be that. I think it will be able to import and help.
So some of this seems to be happening not because we designed it or we did something right, but it's just happening.
Oil is sheer luck, and I think...
no, oil apart, I'm saying even within this whole, the basket of consumer price inflation.
Well, I think, the fruits and vegetables is the joker in the pack. It can spike. See, what is the irony of the situation? Last year we had good monsoons and very high food inflation, almost 12-13%. And this year we'll have a bad monsoon, and food inflation is going to be lower than last year.
Okay.
and that is because government has been a bit more proactive this year.
Is that the reason?
No, I think the numbers will be down more because of a statistical reason. Because it's something like saying that tomatoes went up to 80 rupees a kilo, or onions went up to 100
sure,
rupees a
there's a
kilo.
base effect, yeah.
No, and now they have come down to 40 rupees, which I'm paying in the market. So it's not really, it doesn't really give me that kind of comfort. In fact, I would tend to believe that all this has happened because of extraneous reasons. It's not about any specific policies which have been implemented to improve agricultural productivity, make it less resilient to the vagaries of the monsoon. So I think it's like DK was saying that, okay, it's because of good luck that crude oil prices have come down, and maybe because of all these statistical numbers or things going right because of the
so some things are looking good. Some things you're saying has happened because we had no real design in it.
Yeah.
But what can we do now? What are the things that we should be doing now to ensure that inflation, which is seemingly in our grasp, should be held there and brought down further?
Well, I think one of the things that government was planning APMC, get rid of APMC, and I think that's what to develop markets in agriculture. Then I think productivity enhancing measures, particularly I think
But is that something that can happen quickly?
No, it can't happen quickly. I think so. In proteins, I think you'll have to have a mix of imports and also boost to domestic production, because if you start.
And when you say proteins, you mean because as a country our composition of consumption is changing?
It is changing, and I think and if I'll give you the example of edible oil. We were self-sufficient in edible oil about 15 years back, but we opened up and the farmers started moving up away from oil seeds. And then today we are 50-55% dependent. So I think that should not happen in proteins. I mean, so the point is you need to push domestic sector, but to give comfort very quickly, you need to import also.
So, and you're also confining, I can see, your solutions to the food part of the inflation basket rather than anything else.
I think that is the major.
Because that's the major.
There is disinflation tendency in the other parts. I mean, the non-food parts.
Okay.
Particularly the manufactured items. I think our price indices don't measure it properly, because many of the things you see in the market, buy one get one free. The price, so the index is not able to capture that properly.
Right. So Madan, what's the sense? What should we be doing to capitalize on this good fortune?
No, in fact, I don't think we can
or a
do
sliver of good fortune.
No, the thing is that the important part is that in case there's a shortfall we see in any particular commodity, we should be able to reckon the imports immediately, make sure that supplies are augmented. In fact, there's another nagging fear which is there, that since there could be a late withdrawal of the monsoon. I think last year also we saw excess rainfall during the later part of the year, which actually did affect the crops of vegetables. We should make sure that in case we're going into a similar kind of a situation, try and get your marketing part right, make sure that the imports come in at the right time, so that we don't have a problem of higher inflation. That's the only way in which we can capitalize on it, because I don't think we can do anything to increase supplies as such, which have been a major problem in the past.
And very quickly on interest rates, let me allow you to finish that thought.
No, I think interest rates should be, ideally they should be held on for until such time that we're convinced that inflation has come down to whatever level we think is bearable. When I say we think, if the RBI has targeted 8% CPI, we should be convinced that we're going to remain below 8% for a considerable period of time before we take any interest rate action.
Right, gentlemen, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for being with us. And that's all we have time for on Policy Watch this week. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.